amateka yacu arihariye, ibibazo byacu birihariye. Nibatureke jenoside yadusigiye isomo. Amateka yacu arihariye, ibibazo byacu birihariye. Nibatureke bareke gupfobya jenoside yadusigiye ibikomere. Jenoside igihagarikwa, njyewe narose inzozi, mbona igiti cyatemwe yemwe cyongeye gushibuka, amababi yacyo yarikamo inyoni ziberamo, abazungu n'abirabura bose bifuza kucyugamamo. Numva ijwi rimbwira riti u Rwanda ruzongera rubeho, rirongera rimbwira riti izuba rizarasa. Amateka yacu arihariye, ibibazo byacu birihariye. Nibatureke.
100 days. Thank you for joining us in commemorating innocent perished lives and the cooperative the survivor. Distinguished guests, allow me to present the flow of tonight's event. We have the national anthems, minutes of silence and lighting the flame of hope, screening testimony by Antoinette Mutabazi, marks by the head of mission, marks by the guest of honor. Then we have the refreshment, screening the videos. الضيوف المحترمين، السيدات والسادة، أسعد الله مساءكم بكل خير. معكم عزيزة جناوي. يشرفني أن أكون الليلة مقدمة برنامج بهذا المساء. يصادف الليلة الذكرى 28 للإبادة الجماعية عام 1994 ضد التوتسي في رواندا، والتي حصدت أكثر من 1,000,000 روح بريئة خلال 100 يوم فقط. شكرا جزيلا لوجودكم معنا الليلة في إحياء ذكرى أرواح بريئة هلكت ومواساة الناجين. الضيوف الأجلاء، اسمحوا لي أن أعطيكم نبذة عن برنامجنا الليلة. أولا نشيد العلم، ثم دقيقة صمت حدادا على أرواح المفقودين وإشعال شعلة الأمل، عرض شهادة بواسطة السيدة أنطوانيت موتابازي، ثم خطاب مع رئيس البعثة الرواندية، وخطاب مع السيد سعادة السفير ضيف الشرف. بعد ذلك سنعرض إنجازات رواندا. شكرا.
Rwanda nziza gihugu cyacu, uje imisozi ibiyaga n'ibirunga, ngo byiduhetse nahoranisha. Reka tukurate tukuvuge ibigwi, wowe utubumbiye hamwe twese abanyarwanda uko batubyaye. Berwa sugira singizwa iteka, komeza imihigo Rwanda dukunda, tuhagurukiye kukwitangira, ngo amahoro asabe mu bagutuye. Wishyire wizane muri byose, urangwe n'ishyakutera imbere, uhamye umubano n'amahanga yose, maze ijambo ryawe riguhe ijambo.
نحن جند الله جند الوطن، ادعى داعي الفداء لن نخن، نتحدى الموت عند المحن، نشتري المجد بأغلى ثمن. هذه الأرض لنا فليعش سوداننا علما بين الأمم. يا بني السودان هذا رمزكم، يحمل العتق ويحمي أرضكم.
This is the light of remembrance, the light of life. The Rwandan spirit has never died, and today, this spirit leads us into a brighter future.
Because I value my past, the memories of yesterday can never be changed, but they give me a reason to live again. There is a reason I am here to.
So Rwanda was largely made up of two tribes. Can you explain the first moment where you really realized there was a difference between these tribes?
The first time that I really realized was a difference was when it was in 1990. I was in primary school, and our teacher asked us, "Are you a Hutu? Are you a Tutsi?" And you will raise up your hand. And I didn't really know what they were asking, so I didn't raise up my hand. I went back home, and they said, "Tomorrow don't come to school when you don't know your tribe." So that day, that time when I was sent back home, my mom told me, "When they ask you next time, stand up in the Tutsi." So we were only about like 2 students or 3 in the class. And you have that feeling like I am not wanted, I am not accepted. My classmates don't really like me because of how I was born, and I didn't have a choice about it. I didn't understand, why am I being called a cockroach? Why am I being bullied at school? Why do I have to be beaten or see people being beaten for being Tutsi? So those things were happening when I was growing up, and really it's the ideology, propaganda that was leading to genocide in 1994.
What was their goal, the Hutus?
I wish I could answer that question. Their goal was to exterminate every Tutsi. I remember sitting in the lounge with my dad and my 2 brothers, because my mom was away. She went to visit our grandparents, and she was with our last born, who was 2 years old then. And I said, "I'm not sure if your mom is going to get back. They are going to kill us because we are Tutsi." And he just gave us briefing. He said, you know, put on, we were already in our pajamas, ready to go to bed. And he said, "Put on your clothes, you know, wear layers." So we had 2 layers each. And he said, "If you hide, don't hide together, because if you are together, they will kill you all." The next day, on the 7th in the morning, there were all these people running around the village. I remember hiding under the bed on that day. They came to our house, and my dad was not there because he went to hide. They say, "Where is the cockroach? Where is Inyenzi?" That's the word they used to use in Kinyarwanda. And they are talking about the soldiers that were fighting against them. I'm like, "We don't know where they are." So on the same day, in the evening, I went to hide in the bush. And when I was hiding, I went, of course, you know, our dad told us don't hide together. So I went alone, and I was hiding in the bush and wandering around and waiting. I was lucky because I didn't have identity card. We used to have identity card in Rwanda that's written which tribe are you. So, and you don't get that ID until you are 18 or 16, I think. So I wasn't being asked the ID, so I will hide in front of people. But there's a lady who was walking, hiding, and she had a baby. And she had her ID, and she was just shown her ID, and they just cut her head off. She had a baby. I can't tell how old she was, but was so young because she was still feeding her. And walking, seeing this woman being killed, and seeing the child sucking from its mother when it's dead, I was devastated. I could not pick her up. I wanted to, but I was so afraid to run around with this baby. And yeah, I just passed her and went and hid in the one of the house. You could hear outside, the noise and people running. Oh, find that. There are Tutsis passing. So people will be shouting because they saw someone. When it became about evening, I walked back to my place, and I went and hid in my, what I call the safe place, because it was a pit latrine, which is a toilet with a hole that was completely full and no one was using, and I went back and sat there. Behind that pit latrine, there used to be a football field, and you will hear these Hutus sitting there. They are drinking. They had alcohol, and they were talking about how many Tutsis they have killed. Oh, we killed so-and-so. Oh, we raped so-and-so. And sitting there, I knew that if they see me, they will come and kill me. I was hiding in the bush, and people, Hutu, the killers, were running around saying, come out with the dogs. I did say they were with the dogs. The bodies of people being fed to these dogs, and dog eating them, and sitting, being frightened, knowing that if they see me, they will, bite me. I was so terrified. When I ran from that bush, I just ran, I would say like maybe 100 meters. And then I reached to the road. When I heard they're making noise and the dog running next to me, so I ran away and I fell into the road, and they saw me, said, come. So someone just came and beat me with the big stick they had. Those sticks were kind of big on the top, and they had nails on. I just fell into the hands of those people that waiting to be killing us. And they had, they will say, if you had money and you will give to them, they will kill you by shooting you. If you didn't, they will cut your head off. Some people, they will say, oh, I will give you this, forgive me, but they didn't even have that mercy to forgive. So they chopped people's head off in front of me and throw them in that big hole that was there. I was numb. I saw many people killed. I knew it was me next to be killed. So I wasn't really worried. I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to be killed. I was just like, yeah, that's what is happening. And it was only when there were two people ahead of me that someone shouted. I don't even remember who. I just heard the voice. They said the bank in Kigali is being broken in. They're robbing the bank. So all the killers around us, the attention was not on the people they are killing. They wanted to go and get money. I survived that day because of greedy of people. So they ran away to get money, and I ran off to the bush again and stayed there.
How long were you in the bush for?
So I was in the bush as much as 3 months. It was either in the church, which we were being killed, and I was hiding among the dead bodies. It was either in the pit latrine, I was by myself, I was in the field by myself, or I was on the queue to be killed. So those 3 months has been the longest horror nightmare that I have. Like, I feel like it lasted for eternity, if I may say, because when we talk about it now, we talk about 3 months, but for me, it lasted forever. I felt like it lasted forever because I was not safe at all.
I mean, you're only 12 years old as all of this was going on. What was going on in your head?
You know, when the death is all around you, there's nothing else you think apart from dying. I was numb. I was ready. I knew I would be killed anytime. And I saw people being killed many times. So I was just waiting to be killed. So I kept going until the last day of when I had, again, where we were hiding. I left where I was and I came to see my brother. He's there, he's hungry, and I just sat with him. And the next thing what I hear from the neighborhood people, they are talking, Kigali has been liberated. And who liberated the country is the RPF. So that's when all the killers, all the people that they started running away from Rwanda and go to Congo. That was the end. That was the end. When you see RPF in Inkotanyi coming to you and saying you are safe, yeah, I knew that I am in the good hands.
What happened to the rest of your family over those 3 months?
Yeah. So my brother, my youngest brother, was killed with my mom, and he was 2 years old. They dug under the ground, and they built on top of that, so they will hide the children underneath. There was about 50 children there, so like under 2 who could not run, 3. So my youngest brother was among of those children that were hidden there. And the Hutu came, and when they saw one of the parents bringing food, found something and brought for those children. They poured paraffin on that place, and they just lit to fire, and all these children were burnt, including my youngest brother. My third brother, who is Emil, was also killed during the genocide. I once was with him because they shot him the grenade, and he took part of his head, and I was with him when he was grasping his last breath. I remember when he is asking me for water, I didn't have anything to give him, so that's my last day that I saw my brother being killed, gone, And my second brother, Antoine, he survived. And my dad didn't die, he also survived. But my 2 brothers and my mom were killed in genocide.
what impact does going through something like that, what sort of toll does that take on you?
It has been a long journey to go through these things, because I think what happened to me, your memory has capacity to kind of keep some information, and you don't think about them because you are not ready. I think that's what happened to me. At that time, we are talking about like 5 years, 6 years after genocide, 3 years, those time of period, 10 years. Sometimes I will not be able to sit with people who are talking about their 3 months experience because it was so painful. And when it comes to April every year, and that's when I start feeling, my body will actually feel it, and I will have these memories. I will think of what I saw, but I just want to rush it off because I was not capable. I was 22 then, finished my high school, and I am out. I'm waiting the high school result to go to university. I don't have anything to do. The job I got was with Aegis Trust, and the job was they had a project 10 years after genocide to build what they call Kigali Genocide Memorial. So if you ask, did I know what I was signing up for? Probably not. It took me back to those 3 months, because when I was doing my research going into the village, was to know how many Tutsi family were living in this village, and how were they killed? And then my job was to feed back to the office, because they are trying to build a data of what happened 10 years later. So that's the time, if I may say, 10 years after genocide, I was just like, I just woken up. These things happened to me, and then I lived that life again. The job gave me responsibility to deal with whatever was happening, and that's how I started the journey of dealing with my trauma, but doing something, contributing to the society as well, giving dignity and respect to people we've lost, including my family.
And how are you today?
I am alive. Yes, how am I today? I am doing great. I am thriving. In 2004, I made a choice. I want to start this journey of forgiving. Is it easy? No, it has never been easy. And even now I speak about it. It's not easy. Sometimes people will intermarriage into Hutu and Tutsis, which it was, they will. So I know one of my auntie married a Hutu man, and this man killed her. But I am committed to keep trying, to keep forgiving when people wrong me, when people are not making the right choices. And that's what really I want to tell everyone that I get opportunity to share with. And that's what I will say, that's what I said when I met the man who killed my auntie. And I was sitting with him. He looked at me. So remember, this is in 2016, and the last time he knows me, it was before, in 93 or 92, I was a baby. So I'm an adult, and he looked at me, and I said, "Do you know me?" And he said, "Yes." He could see me through my grandma, who is his mother-in-law. And so I said, yes, I'm glad you know me. I came here to say I forgive you. The forgiveness is the key to your freedom. That's how I see it. And it's a choice and it's a journey, and it's not easy.
Guest of honor, excellencies, ambassadors, heads of regional and international organizations, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It is a great honor for me to welcome you all to the 28th commemoration of the 1994 genocide against Tutsi in Rwanda. Many thanks to the guest of honor, Ambassador Erezin Ibrahim Hussein, the Acting Director General of the Department of Africa at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the Sudan. We thank you for gracing this occasion. Thanks to your excellencies, members of the diplomatic corps, friends of Rwanda, and fellow Rwandan nationals for joining us today. As we all know, 7th of April each year, Rwandans and the international community commemorate the 1994 genocide against Tutsi. Indeed, UN General Assembly Decision 72/550 of 26 January 2018 designates 7th April as an International Day of Reflection on the 1994 genocide against Tutsi in Rwanda. Relatedly, African Union Decision Assembly African Union or AU Decision 695 of July 2018 designates 7th April as the African Union Day of Commemoration of the Genocide against Tutsi in Rwanda. Given that 7th April was in the period of Holy Ramadan, we here in the Sudan as a diplomatic mission chose to have this event today. The theme of the 28th commemoration of the 1994 genocide against Tutsi today is, or this year, is Remember, Unite, Renew. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Rwanda has existed as a nation state for over 600 years, and before colonialism, Rwandans lived harmoniously with no intercommunal violence. Rwandans have an identical culture, one language, live across the same localities, and before the colonists shared the same values. The colonial policy of divide and rule, however, divided Rwandans into ethnic groups of Twa, Hutu, and Tutsi, which initially were social classes, with fluidity where individuals moved across classes based on changes in one's wealth status. In escalation, in 1957, the colonial administration sponsored the drafting and adoption of what was named the Hutu Manifesto. This manifesto was founded on an ideology of hate and discrimination against Tutsi. It stood for total monopolization of the social, political, and economic spheres of the country by the Hutu. At the onset of political parties in 1959, an ethnic political party called the Party for the Hutu Emancipation, or Parmehutu, was birthed. The push for independence by the last effective king of Rwanda, King Mutara Rudahigwa III, in the mid-1950s, like was happening in all other countries that were colonies at the time, was a red line for our colonial masters. This king was invited for a meeting in Bujumbura, Burundi by the colonial administration, and he mysteriously died there. Meanwhile, in 1959, 10 Hutu commandments were introduced by one called Joseph Habyarimana, leader of a Prosoma, a political party that was aligned to the Parimehutu that I have already mentioned. As an example, one of the 10 commandments was that no Tutsi should be trusted, loved, or valued in any way. These commandments were foundation for what later metamorphosed into the genocide ideology, whose architects aimed at total extermination of the Tutsi in Rwanda. With the foundation for conflict well set, resultant pogroms of 1959 caused the first mass movement of Tutsi refugees in neighboring countries like Uganda, Tanzania, Burundi, DRC, and Kenya as well. These were early beginnings for what was to later climax into the 1994 genocide against Tutsi. And surprisingly, when Rwanda got independence in 1962, Parimehutu that I have already mentioned produced the first Republican president, Mr. Gergori Kayibanda. The two post-independence governments of 1962, followed by the one of 1973, which was a coup, took over the colonial baton of the divide and rule policy with a lot of vigor. Ethnic-based national identity cards were used in government-engineered killing cycles and discrimination against Tutsi. I wish to mention here that these ethnic-based national IDs were issued by our colonial masters back in 1932 after they had carried out a very dehumanizing social research where we have video clips showing them measuring the width of the forehead, the width of the nose, and the length of the nose. And on that basis, they determined who was Tutsi and who was Hutu, and the IDs were issued across the country. And whoever came out of these families later on was issued with the same national ID. To ensure blind mass following, Rwandans were kept ignorant by limiting their access to education and exposure to the outside world. This was done by the post-independence republics, the two that I have mentioned. Access to quality education was a preserve of leaders' children that benefited from scholarships in some European countries. Getting travel documents was a big favor. Rwanda was an extremely closed society. The periodical killings of Tutsi and dehumanization that spanned over 3 decades, with no consequences from the international community, groomed impunity to dangerous levels. Consequently, by 1990, planning and preparation for total extermination of Tutsi began. Within 100 days from 7th April to 4th July 1994, over 1 million innocent souls were butchered. Tutsi women were not only killed, but sexually and brutally humiliated. I think the testimony speaks volumes. The 1994 genocide will forever remain the darkest chapter of Rwanda's history. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, evidence for prior planning of the genocide include: 1, recruitment, training, and arming of Interahamwe militia in 1992. 2, systematic spread of hate propaganda and dehumanization of Tutsi, calling them snakes, cockroaches, and all the worst you can think of. And this was done by leaders of a government that should have been responsible for fending for the entire population, but here they were plotting and planning to kill a part of them. Number 3, years of tormenting, limiting of Tutsi in education, teach children in education. They, across the country, would have roll calls in the morning, in classes, small children like the lady you saw giving a testimony, asking them to stand. Tutsis in this class, stand up. And they would stand and they would ask children to look at them, go touch them, see how Tutsi bodies are like. And they would also list, in moving from one level of school, grade 12 or grade 10 or to another, or university, for example, they would do national exams, but the marks scores would not be shown to anyone. They would just say you have been promoted to the next level. And of course, the basis for that would be the national ID that identified one as Tutsi, as Hutu, and which part of the country you came from. Because the discrimination eventually even went to the extent of, small as we are, Rwanda, went to the extent of even identifying some based on the region they came from. And talking about the closed society that Rwanda was at the time, moving from one district to another district required a special permit from the local administration. Small country that Rwanda is, but you had to get special permission to move from one small district to another small district. Another evidence for the planning, sanitization of killing of Tutsi by calling it gukora, or working. That's how much killing of the Tutsi was valued at the time. Cyclic killings of Tutsi from as far back as 1959, the pogroms that I mentioned. Number 6, importation of millions of machetes in the early 1990s. I won't mention which countries they were imported from. Number 7, distribution of arms and ammunition across the country, and this was done by senior leaders, including the Prime Minister. We have video clips that show him distributing guns to the ordinary civilians to go and do the work of the killing of Tutsi. Genocide happened despite prior signing of the Arusha Peace Accord between government of Rwanda and the Rwanda Patriotic Front in August 1993. The over 1 million Tutsis that had been made stateless from as far back as 1959, those that survived the pogroms and had to run out of the country, eventually tried to talk to leaders in the region and requested that they talk to their colleague in Rwanda, who was President Habyarimana, to explain to him the need for him to bring back, to allow these refugees to return to their country. And he said he cannot, because Rwanda is a small country. And he compared Rwanda at the time to a glass full of water. And he said, if you add more water to a glass that is full, it overflows. So no space for Rwanda. We can talk to a few countries on the African continent that have small populations, and he mentioned some of the countries that can take in these refugees. So in the end, some of the young men, or even those born after they had left Rwanda and had been made stateless, got together and organized a liberation struggle. So that is the RPF that I'm talking about. And of course, they did it in conjunction with many other Rwandese that were inside the country, both Tutsis and Hutus, that wanted to have a change in the country. And these are the people that had signed the peace agreement, of course, out of pressure, military pressure, back in August 1993. The RPF had sent its officials to the capital, Kigali, in readiness for joining a power-sharing agreement. They were housed at the parliamentary building under protection of 600 RPF soldiers. However, prospects for RPF's joining of government caused internal fission in the regime owing to Hutu extremists who were incensed by that possibility. Notorious among these extremists was one Colonel Theoneste Bagosora, who at the time was a director of cabinet at the Ministry of Defense, who in protest to the peace accord signed in Arusha, like I said, declared, and I quote, that there would be an apocalypse in Rwanda. He said it in French. And of course, indeed, the apocalypse happened. When the genocide began in 1994, that was the very apocalypse he had talked about. He was however, later in 2008, sentenced to 35 years by the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda that was sitting in Arusha at the time, and he died in prison in Mali last September. When the genocide began on 7th April, there was immediate onslaught by the government forces on RPF officials housed at the parliamentary building. However, I must say that they were not successful in achieving the objective they had set for themselves. They were repulsed. Ironically, too, UN ordered an immediate partial withdrawal of the United Nations Assistance Mission to Rwanda, MINUSMA, which had been deployed back in 1993 to assist the implementation of the Arusha Peace Accord. The UN resolved to reduce the force from 1,700 to 270 only. This number could only observe the carnage once the carnage started. Two European countries with forces in Rwanda at the time hurriedly exfiltrated expatriates for their safety when the genocide began. Amidst this rampage and carnage, with Tutsi left at their own peril and bloodletting all over the country, the RPF was left with no alternative but to launch a military campaign to try and stop the genocide, save lives and the country. This military campaign successfully ended the genocide through the liberation that took effect on 4th July 1994, ushering in a new chapter of sanity. Many of those involved in the liberation struggle paid the ultimate price. Their sacrifice was not in vain. We remember them with reverence. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as we commemorate, this is a day we compare and contrast evil and a leadership that values human lives. It is a time we give commendation to the RPF young men and women led by His Excellency President Paul Kagame that took up the mantle of ending the genocide. We cannot thank them enough for ending the state of statelessness to which over 1 million refugees had been condemned to, with Rwandans inside the country wallowing in poverty and ignorance. It is a time we remember and pay tribute to over 1 million innocent souls butchered heartlessly by the government that was supposed to provide for them. It is a time to recognize the immense resilience of genocide survivors, like the one we've just seen, whose physical and psychological scars are still fresh, but yet are contributing towards realizing the Rwanda we want and aspire. It is a time to strengthen our unity and renew our collective determination to develop the country we so dearly love. After liberation, RPF, the Rwandan Patriotic Front, and enlisted politicians from the old regime and other political parties with no known role in the genocide and formed a government of national unity. Security forces were also formed by integrating many from the former regime. The new government faced many challenges, not least, one, promotion of national unity and reconciliation through civic education and other interventions. 2, salvaging a totally devastated economy. 3, repatriating millions of refugees herded into exile in Eastern DRC by the very genocidal forces that had killed many of our people, and they herded them into Eastern DRC just for replenishment of their own forces to come back and continue with the mission they had not managed to accomplish. 4, fighting insurgency of the late 1990s, the very insurgency that these genocidal forces launched right after they got in Eastern DRC. 5, supporting thousands of vulnerable genocide survivors, like the one we've just seen. 6, fighting genocide ideology and its related impunity. And this was done by a number of interventions, including transitional justice, where we had to develop our own homegrown solution, or the Gacaca courts you might have heard of. Because if you had used the classical justice system, those in the know estimated it would have taken 200 years to try all those that were involved in the atrocities. And finally, rehabilitating Rwanda's image in the global family of nations. After we had turned ourselves into a failed state and killed almost 15% of our own population, rehabilitating the image of our country in the family of nations was a big priority. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, 28 years after the genocide perpetrated against Tutsi, Rwanda has been rebuilt beyond all expectations. The country is politically and socially stable, peaceful, and more prosperous than it has ever been. Though still work in progress, the country has made important strides on the path to unity, with collective identity no longer based on ethnicity, but on civic identity of all Rwandan citizens. Rwandan youth and women have been empowered to realize their full potential. The country enjoys peace and security and is a major contributor to UN peacekeeping forces. The economy for 16 years until the COVID-19 global disruption in 2020 grew at an average of 8%. Given the recent ramping up of COVID-19 vaccinations, now at about 70% of our population, and the reopening of all economic activities, the economy, which contracted by 3.4% in 2020, has rebounded with a 10.2% growth in 2021. Meanwhile, Vision 2020 ended with a firm foundation for the future. Its succeeding economic development blueprint, Vision 2050, aims to turn Rwanda into a middle-income country by the year 2035 and high-income country by the year 2050. Ambitious as it may look, Vision 2020's foundation, coupled with the relatively well-developed human capital, rigorous monitoring and evaluation system, performance-based contracts, or what we call Imihigo, and a very focused, results-oriented leadership are a good source of confidence for realizing the aspirations encapsulated in our Vision 2050. Moreover, with the now-end COVID-19 pandemic, the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting will be held in Kigali this June, after it was postponed twice. We urge all CHOGM member states to attend this vital meeting, rest assured of their most comfortable stay in a serene environment, and most importantly, a very impactful meeting. I see His Excellency the Ambassador of Canada, amidst us here, and many other excellencies that are members of the CHOGM. We're more than happy to receive you in Rwanda. We are, in the meantime, thankful for the increasing number of countries contributing to fighting genocide-related impunity by apprehending genocide fugitives for trial. Some of the fugitives have either been extradited to Rwanda, so far 29 in total, or tried in their current jurisdictions of abroad, so far 24. A most recent genocide fugitive extradited to Rwanda, one Jean-Paul Michomyiza, was by the Kingdom of Sweden on 27th April this year. We thank the Kingdom of Sweden for this very important gesture. However, we still have slightly over 1,000 indicted genocide fugitives freely roaming the world. We request member states to, in observance of UN and AU resolutions and justice in general arrest these suspected criminals for trial. These are also sworn adherents of denial and revisionism, which, according to genocide scholars, is the 8th and last phase of any genocide. In fighting genocide ideology, Rwanda promulgated law number 59/2018 of 22 August 2018 on genocide ideology and related crimes. Given the continued threat of genocide ideology, and yet no country is immune, we wish to thank member states that have promulgated the same law on punishment of genocide-related crimes, including genocide denial and revisionism. We request others to also consider this very seriously. The African Commission on Human and People's Rights, in its resolution ACHPR/Resolution 485 of July 2021, urges member states to initiate efforts of addressing existing and emerging trends of denial and revisionism of the 1994 genocide against Tutsi in Rwanda. We urge other member states to initiate similar laws to actualize the never again that we, for humanity's sake, aspire to. In preservation of history and the memory of those lost in the 1994 genocide against Tutsi, government has initiated a process of registering 4 of its 172 genocide memorial sites that are scattered or dotted across the country. We have started the process of registering 4 of these on the UNESCO World Heritage List. The 4 genocide memorials are called Nyamata, Murambi, Bisesero, and Gisozi. I believe a number of you that have been to Rwanda probably have visited Kigali, the Gisozi one, the one that is located in Kigali. We request all member states to support this bona fide endeavor. I'm aware the guest of honor actually visited the Gisozi one that I have just mentioned. He had told me about it. We are meanwhile thankful to friends and development partners for support accorded to Rwanda's transformative journey thus far. Relatedly, I wish to take this opportunity to commend the people and the government of the Republic of the Sudan for their continued friendship and cooperation. Our growing bilateral relationship is anchored in shared values as well as history, and is supported by signed memorandum of understanding and agreements in areas of mutual interest. Both countries belong to a number of regional and international organizations, among them the African Union, COMESA, African Continental Free Trade Area, and ICGLR, just to mention a few. It is against this background that Lieutenant General Jabil Ibrahim visited Rwanda on 30th March this year as a special envoy with a message from His Excellency President of the Sovereignty Council for my president. And I'm aware the guest of honor was part of that delegation. Meanwhile, with Rwanda's internationally acclaimed business environment, I wish to urge Sudan-based investors, and I'm sure we have some fairly good representation amidst us. I wish to urge Sudan-based investors and tourists to visit and explore the enormous opportunities offered by Rwanda for the mutual benefit of both countries and our peoples. Let me end my remarks with His Excellency President Paul Kagame's own words during the 27th commemoration of the 1994 genocide against Tutsi. And I quote, "Rwanda may not yet be wealthy or fully healthy. And we have vulnerabilities and limitations like any country. But we also know how to deal with our problems. Thank you all. God bless you. Shukran.
عادة السيد رئيس البعثة الدبلوماسية الرواندية المعتمدة لدى الخرطوم، السادة أصحاب السعادة السفراء والقائمين بالأعمال وممثلي البعثات الدبلوماسية والمنظمات الدولية، السيدات والسادة الضيوف الكرام، يشرفني أصالة عن نفسي ونيابة عن حكومة جمهورية السودان وشعبه المشاركة في ذكرى المجازر البشرية التي ارتكبت في رواندا قبل 28 عاماً. وتأتي هذه الذكرى للترحم على أرواح الضحايا وأخذ العبر منها. لا شك أن إحياء هذه الذكرى هو تذكر لآلام الضحايا والحداد على أرواحهم وأرواح الأمهات والآباء والأبناء والبنات والأصدقاء والأقارب الذين سفكت دماؤهم دون ذنب. من المهم ونحن نحيي الاحتفال بهذه الذكرى سنوياً وفاءً لأرواح الشهداء للحيلولة دون حدوثها في المستقبل، أن نعمل سوياً على محاربة خطاب الكراهية والعنف والخوف من الأجانب وتهميش الآخر والسعي إلى احترام حقوق الإنسان. نشيد بالقيادة الرواندية في تضميد جروح الماضي والعمل لإنجاح المصالحات الأهلية ومحاكمة مرتكبي الجرائم. السيد رئيس البعثة الرواندية الدبلوماسية بالخرطوم، صارت رواندا اليوم نموذجاً يحتذى به في القارة الإفريقية، وكذلك لا ننسى التنمية التي تحققت والنهضة الشاملة التي يشهد عليها العالم. ونحن في السودان في أشد الحاجة إلى الاستفادة من التجربة الرواندية في المصالحات والتنمية الاقتصادية. كما نشيد بتجربة رواندا في إنشاء وزارة وليدة للوحدة الوطنية والمشاركات الوطنية بهدف تعزيز مقومات الوحدة الوطنية من خلال المناهج والبرامج التعليمية والمحافظة على ذاكرة الإبادة الجماعية، وذلك منعاً لتكرارها في المستقبل. ونحن في هذه الذكرى نجدد العهد السيد رئيس البعثة بمبدأ عدم الإفلات من العقاب وسيادة حكم القانون واحترام حقوق الإنسان وتكوين المؤسسات المنوط بها للقيام بذلك، بالإضافة إلى حرية الرأي والتعبير والعدالة الاجتماعية. ولا يفوتنا ونحن نشيد بما حققته رواندا من اندماج مجتمعي أن ننقل كذلك رغبة السودان في الاستفادة من تلك التجربة في مجال المصالحات المجتمعية وتعزيز دور المرأة والشباب والبناء الوطني. في الختام، السيد رئيس البعثة الرواندية بالخرطوم، نؤكد رغبة السودان الصادقة في تعزيز التعاون مع جمهورية رواندا الشقيقة من أجل تحقيق المصالحة الوطنية والرفاه الاقتصادي لشعبينا ولشعوب المنطقة، فالحكمة ضالة المؤمن. ونتقدم لكم بالشكر.
We're taking you to a journey to discover how Kigali became the cleanest city in Africa. At first glimpse, Rwanda's capital is a model African country. Clean, organized, beautiful. But Kigali hasn't always been the cleanest city in Africa. A lot of restructuring and planning was put to give the city its current status. Kigali is the capital and largest city of Rwanda. It is near the nation's geographic center. The city has been Rwanda's economic, cultural, and transport hub since it became the capital at independence in 1962. The city of Kigali was founded in 1907 by German administrator and explorer Richard Kent. Rwanda and neighboring Burundi had been assigned to Germany by the Berlin Conference of 1884. Germany established a presence in the country in 1897 with the formation of an alliance with the king, Yuhi V Musinga. Kent arrived in 1899, exploring Lake Kivu and searching for the source of the River Nile. When Germany decided in 1907 to separate the administration of Rwanda from that of Burundi, Kent was appointed as the country's first resident. He chose to make his headquarters in Kigali due to its central location in the country, and also because the area afforded good views and security. Kent built himself a house in Nyarugenge, the first European-style house in the city of Kigali, which remains in use today as the Kent House Museum of National History. Despite a German ordinance written in 1905, which prohibited non-indigenous natives from entering Rwanda, Kent began permitting the entry of Indian traders in 1908, which allowed commercial activity to begin in Rwanda in 1908. The first businesses were established in Kigali that year by Greek and Indian merchants, with assistance from Baganda and Swahili people. Items traded included clothes and beads. However, commercial activity was limited and there were only around 30 firms in the city around 1914. Kent also opened government-run schools in Kigali, which began educating Tutsi students. Kigali became the capital upon Rwanda's independence in 1962. Butare, a prominent city in Rwanda at the time, was initially the leading contender to be the capital of the new independent nation, but Kigali was chosen because of its more central location. The city grew slowly during the following decades, but retained a small town feel with just 25,000 people and 5 paved roads by the early 1970s. During the 1994 Rwandan genocide, the few infrastructural development that had started in Kigali were halted and a lot of properties were destroyed. Prior to becoming the president of Rwanda, Pastor Bizimungu, who was the then president of Rwanda, had already begun the reconstruction of the city of Kigali before his resignation. When Paul Kagame took over as the president of Rwanda in the year 2000, everything changed in Kigali. Now let's look at how Kigali actually became the cleanest city in Africa. When Paul Kagame took over as president of Rwanda, he introduced a strategic development plan for the country in general and Kigali in particular. In 2009, Kigali's leaders decided to start demolishing slums in the capital's poor suburbs, especially those with little access to piped water and electricity, and replaced them with new roads and homes. Families whose homes got demolished got a compensation of $1,500 to $2,000 to help them settle in. The move was a first step in what has turned into an ambitious master plan to clean up the city of Kigali. One that has led to the city being hailed as one of the greenest and cleanest cities in Africa. In 2002, as part of the campaign by the World Health Organization to reduce air pollution and destruction of the ecosystem caused mainly by plastic bags, several nations were called upon to take stringent measures with regards to the production and usage of plastic bags in their countries. In 2002, Rwanda was the first country in Africa and second in the world after Bangladesh to ban the production and importation of plastic bags. Rwanda has zero tolerance towards plastic bags, and traffickers caught carrying illegal plastic bags in Rwanda are liable to be fined, jailed for up to 6 months, or forced to make public confessions. The banning of plastic bags in Rwanda greatly improved the hygienic condition of the city, as most of the streets of Kigali became plastic bag free. In 2013, municipal authorities drew up a master plan to improve the city's environment, while also trying to promote social inclusion, sustainable economic development, and access to civic facilities. One main focus was traffic congestion. To try to alleviate it, the Rwandan government spent $76 million to pave narrow streets, widen all main roads to dual carriageways, and improve signs. It also upgraded bus services between the suburbs and the city center to encourage people to use public transport. Also, the government committed nearly $40 million to relocate several dozen factories in the former wetlands industrial area to a newly established special economic zone. Hawkers and street vendors were prohibited and defaulters were sanctioned. Initially, a lot of Rwandans were resistant to these new laws about street hawking, but later realized the goal of the law. Another pertinent reason why Rwanda became extremely clean was the introduction of the Umuganda, a community cleanup campaign held on the last Saturday of every month. The cleanup campaign is not a volunteer project, it's an obligation and is closely monitored by forces of law and order. During the Umuganda, everyone, including the president and expatriates, joined in cleaning the streets and watering plants. What do you expect from a country where its president joins in the cleaning of the streets? Perfect, right? Another reason why Kigali is so beautiful and clean is because it's the administrative hub and residence of the president of Rwanda. some of the country's richest people and expatriates live in Kigali. As a result, a lot of effort and hard work goes into making the city look clean and beautiful. Now let's talk about Kigali, the green city. Rwanda is working on a green city in Kigali city. The plan is to have the 2.3 square miles allocated to efficient factories, sustainable housing and green cars. According to the African Exponent, the project is estimated to cost $5 billion. A project of this scale considers many factors. The Rwandan Green City Pilot Project covers every environmental concern and is created in a sustainable way. The project has developed its own pillars of green urbanism that the project follows and can be easily piloted in other cities. The green city will have all the infrastructure and services of the city, but each part will be eco-friendly. Electric vehicles, bicycle lanes, biogas, forest, environmental waste treatment are all part of the city planning process and will be part of the final city. The government hopes the city will lead to job creation, improved sanitation, and public transport access. There are two main projects happening on the site. The first, Khartoum Green Park, is a 410-house development that meets environmental standards. This will be a pilot for other urban planning green building projects. Second, green affordable housing will be added to the city. Future phases will include green offices and commercial buildings. As part of the pilot, the project will track the metrics it's developed. Key metrics include voided carbon dioxide emission and green jobs created. Kigali has a new mayor, Prudence Rubingiza. In an interview in September 2019, he spoke about the need for a green city and has this to say: "Now, why do we need green development? This will help cope up not only with the climate change issue, but also with the urbanization that is really affecting the city in a way. That is why we need to start thinking of a green city, and the key factors include all Rwandans being or having that environmental responsibility and understanding. We need to utilize land property, be innovative, and use less polluting materials." Although there's a lot of controversy around Paul Kagame's leadership, Rwanda under Paul Kagame has become one of the most prominent and emerging countries in Africa. Kigali, its capital city, has become the pride of Africa when it comes to hygiene and sanitation, and will remain the cleanest city in Africa for a long time to come.